The Battle of Fandane-Thiouthioune, also known as the Battle of Somb or the Battle of Somb-Tioutioune, occurred on 18 July 1867. It was a religious war between the Serer people and the Muslim Marabouts of the 19th century in Senegal and the Gambia, but it also had a political and economic dimension to it. Vendetta and empire-building. Fandane-Thiouthioune and Somb were part of the pre-colonial Serer Kingdom of Sine, now part of independent Senegal. Background to Battle of Fandane-Thiouthioune. Prior to this battle, Maba Diakhou, the leader of the Marabouts, was influenced by the king of Thiouthioune and Baol, Lat Dior, to launch a jihadist assault in the Sine. Lat Dior had a grudge against Maba Senegal and Fandane after he was defeated by the French at the Battle of Loro on January 12, 1864, and exiled from his kingdom. Lat Dior sought refuge with the Maba Senegal, who granted him asylum. The Damaltain asked the Maba Senegal to loan him some of his forces so he could fight against the French and regain his throne. The Maba Senegal refused to do that because he was already engaged in a long battle against the French himself in regards to the sovereignty of Jol, one of his provinces. Lat Dior sought the assistance of Maba, the Almami of Nioro-du-Rip. Maba promised to help Lat Dior regain his throne if he converted to Islam. Lat Dior converted, and in 1867 he proposed to the Almami to launch a jihad in Sine. The Marabouts surprised the Serer people of Mbinongor, a small Serer village in the Sine. The surprise of Mbinongor in 1867. Although the Serers managed to drive back the Marabout forces, stopping them from conquering the country, the Marabouts' attack caused significant damage before they were finally forced to retreat. Some prominent Serer princesses such as Linguère Selbérendofna Diouf, daughter of the Maba Senegal, was abducted and forcefully married off to Abdoulaye Alamata Ba, Maba Diakhou's brother. Princess Linguère Fatma Choub was also abducted along with Linguère Selbérendofna and held prisoners by the Marabout forces. Some prominent Serer personalities and princes such as Boukri Noër Diouf, who was a relative and counsel of the King of Sine, was killed in that attack. After this incident, the Maba Senegal sent a letter to the leader of the Marabouts, Maba Diakhou, inviting him to an open battle. In that letter, he wrote, "This attack is undignified. If you are a man, I challenge you to come back and meet the full army of Sine in open battle." Fandane-Thiouthioune. After Maba Senegal and Famic's invitation to Maba to an open battle following the surprise of Mbinongor, Maba and his army went to the Sine, having acquired arms and ammunition in British Gambia. On the 18th of July 1867, the Watchers notified the King of Sine that the Rip army is approaching Sine. The rituals according to Serer oral tradition, before Maba Senegal and Famic and his army made the way to the battlefield, he summoned the elders to perform the ancient rituals of the forefathers. He then commanded his Jarif, also a Saltig Wassailicine, to perform the ritual of the ancestors and predict the outcome. Wassailicine is reported to have cited the name of Rug, raised his spear to the gods of the heavens and struck it to the ground. He then cried out, "Victory!" During the battle, Maba Diakhou is said to have recited the Shahada from the Quran. The armies, Maba Senegal and Famic Diouf's army, composed of the Boumi Somb, the Great Jarif and his army from the south, Maba Patar and his army for the northeast, the Sandiagendiob from the north, Maba Ahmed Noër Diouf Mak Orja Noër Diouf, the Great Faber, as well as the army of Sine, covering the west and northwest, Maba Saloum Sadia Ukarembi Odijet, etc. The Griot's speech Kingdom of Sine, a call for arms. Maba Diak-Ba was accompanied by his brothers Usman Ba and Abdullah Uli Ba, the king of Kayur, and Baol Damaltain Lat Dono E Lata Giop, the king of Jola. Baba Jola Falbari Sena Bao Njie Gumbagay, also spelt Gumbagai. Baran Sisi, his generals such as Mama Jalo Nyang and Tafsir Sa, Loli Jabao Samba, etc. The battle, the Sine army having performed the required rituals according to Serer custom, Maadia Sinigkumba and Ofno Famigdu fled his army to Somb, the battlefield. Serer tradition states that Somb was the starting point of the battle, but it did not end there. It ended in Fandane-Thiouthioune, where the outcome was decided. Muslim tradition agrees pretty much with this account. On the day of the battle, there was a heavy rain. Maad Somorgalo Diouf with his cousin Mabane Somb Faye and the Griots led an offensive attack on the Muslim Marabout forces. The Serer strategy was to push the Muslim Marabout forces into Somb, where a strong resistance had been prepared, and to prevent them from entering Thiouthioune. The strategy failed. Maba and his army successfully entered Thiouthioune. However, at Thiouthioune, Maba's army faced a strong resistance by some of the retinue forces of King Ahmed Noer of Thiouthioune, which included Maad Somorgalo Diouf and the princes Nibadior Diouf, Madior Latjigay and Biram Diouf. The battle took place between Somb and Thiouthioune and lasted 3/4 of the morning. In the early stages of the battle, the Muslim Marabouts prevailed. The princes and Maad Somorgalo Diouf were killed. The Prince Mabane Somb Faye committed suicide when he was captured by the Muslim Marabouts. Around 12 p.m., it started to rain. Maba and his army took refuge in the coppices which surrounded the pond of Fandane and attempted to dry off their arms. Around that time, Maad Gumba and Ofno Famik had left Endofina Nomad with his army and moving towards Fandane to defend it. Before his arrival, Damaltain Lat Dono Elata and Baba Jola Falbari Sainabao contemplated withdrawing from the battle at around 2 p.m. Damaltain Lat Dior reported to Maba that he had heard the sound of signs Junjung approaching, and Maad Gumba and Ofno Famik is bound to be among them. He tried to discuss an exit strategy because the Sine army would be too strong for them. Maba was not interested in an exit strategy. His mission was to Islamize and conquer Serer Sine. When Maad Gumba and Ofno Famik and his army, accompanied by the king of Patar, the king of Paukam and the Sandigan Diob, arrived on the scene, they interposed between the Muslim Marabout forces and the kingdom of Saloum, locking the Marabouts in Sine and cutting off their exit route into Nioro du Rip via Saloum. Damaltain Lat Dono Elata and Baba Jola Falbari Sainabao Njie, realizing that the cause has been lost, abandoned Maba in the battlefield. They fought the way out of the battlefield. The Damaltain escaped and headed towards Kayur and the Baba Jola towards Gossas. The Serer army defeated the Muslim Marabouts. Maba was killed at Fandane and so was the Serer Prince Makorja Noer Diouf, whom according to some was responsible for killing Maba. The king of Sine was injured. Many of Maba's men fell at Fandane-Thiouthioune. His generals such as Mama Jalo Nyang were held prisoners. Mama Jalo was released 2 days after the battle to go and relay the incident in his country. After Maba had been killed, Maad Gumba and Ofno Famik had his head cut off and his limbs dismembered. He then sent an arm and the head, with a letter to the French commandant at Gorée to announce his victory. The remains of Maba's body were scattered in several parts of Sine, including Fela, Somb-Tioutioune, and Ialgae, and towards Thioumasses. According to some scholars such as Diegner, Becker, Kake-Diouf, Klein, etc., Battle-Fandane-Thiouthioune letter and action was a threat to the French administration in Senegal, especially his succeeding letter sent to the French governor, which listed the prominent members of Maba's army that had fallen in the Sine. The French administration in Senegal under the governorship of Emile Pinet-Laprade kept out of the battle. They armed neither side nor did they involve the forces. The French also had limited ammunition and forces. Although Laprade tried to gain more arms and French forces from France for the protection of French interest in the colony, the French government in Paris refused to sanction it and decided to devote all French resources in France due to the crisis in Europe and their ultimate defeat in the Franco-Prussian War. As such, Laprade was ordered to stay on the defensive, and told he would not even receive white troops to replace those who have died from disease. Abdoulaye Ouliba was not killed in the battle. In a revenge attack, he was castrated for participating in the surprise of Mbinongor, the kidnapping of Linguère Selbert-Diouf, forcefully marrying her and making her pregnant. Although released, he went missing for some time. People thought that he had died like his two brothers at the battle. He resurfaced by January 1868 during the raidings of the Mandinka principalities of Niani and Uli in the Gambia. Victory Anthem of Sine. At the end of the battle, the victorious king of Sine, Somb-Tioutioune, nursed his injuries and led his army back home. The griots of Sine beat their junjung and chanted the following hymn in his honor. Controversy. Senegal's Ministry of Culture states that Maba was buried in Battle of Fandane, the mausoleum which is venerated by people in honor of Maba. Serer Sine's oral tradition refute this. According to the Serers of Sine, after Maba was killed, he was dismembered and his body parts scattered in various parts of the country. An arm and the head were sent to the French commandant at Gorée, accompanied by a letter from Maad Senegal and Thiouthioune. The tradition went on to state that the mausoleum that is venerated is that of Thiouthioune and not that of Maba Diak. It was Thiouthioune who was buried, not Maba. According to Kake-Diouf, in a letter marked the 31st of July 1867 deposited at the National Archives of Senegal, the French replied to Maad and Thiouthioune previous letter in which they asked, "What do you want us to do with his remains?"